We're going to move on to racial equity right now. The first question in that category comes from Roy Hom of Asiatown.
If you are elected mayor, what will you do to ensure that the Asian American community is represented in your administration? And what will you do to ensure that the AAPI community is protected from anti-Asian hate crimes and discrimination?
Ray Hom, Mr. Kelly, what do you think?
Thank you. This is a very important issue that is just has been brought to light. I think what we need to do is, in terms of what will we do in the administration, that's a matter of hiring. That's a matter of hiring a staff, a cabinet that looks like the city of Cleveland. I have also been working on instituting bystander training. It will be mandatory for employees of the city of Cleveland to have bystander training. I've been talking to our Department of Human Resources about how we can get that up and running, and it is in the works, but that would be something that we can do immediately to show this community that they are a valued member of the Cleveland community.
Thank you. Mr. Bibb.
You know, it's important for us to really ground this conversation in facts. And, you know, it's great that the city of Cleveland has announced that racism is indeed a public health crisis, but we got to move to action. So as mayor, number one, I'm going to hire a chief racial equity officer in my administration to make sure that every decision that we make inside City Hall is viewed through a racial equity lens. Secondly, I'm going to require not only my cabinet, but every employee, including frontline city employees, to undergo racial equity and inclusion training. Many of our community leaders all across this region have gone through that training, and that'll be a good step in the right direction for every employee inside my administration to understand the root causes of racism. And then, as Council President Kelly mentioned, this is about representation and hiring. And I want to make sure that I'm grounding my policymaking as the next mayor in the lived experiences of our residents. That includes members of the Asian American community, and I intend to make sure they are in my cabinet and are getting visible leadership positions all across my administration.
Thank you. Ross DiBello.
Yeah, one of the first planks on my platform is to bring back unfettered public comment to all city council meetings. Many people of many cultures and many neighborhoods are not heard right now or represented. We've had many discrimination cases against all ethnicities and origins in our public health department. If we hear, like Greater Cleveland OCA, all AAPI advocacy groups, if we let you talk to us and tell us, do we need to hire a cabinet position? Do we need to hire more people who speak this language or that dialect? We'll be just fine, right? Then we'll work with HR. We'll start hiring where we need to hire. And we do need cultural sensitivity training in all of our city departments, right? Ongoing bias training, and that would be the work we do.
Thank you. Mr. Reed.
I just want to say this. It's all well and good to say what's going to happen in your cabinet. It's all well and good to say what you're going to do. But if I look up on the stage, I think there were only 3 of us after the incident against the Asian community was out there with the Asian community doing their most perilous time in the city of Cleveland. That's what a mayor should be doing. Telling people you're going to put them in their cabinet, that's easy. Telling people what you're going to do with policy, that's easy. But the hard job is going out there with those individuals and showing it. And everybody knows one thing about myself. They know I'm transparent. They know I'm out there on the front line. That's what that man wants to know. He wants to know when an issue is facing his community, will the mayor of the city of Cleveland go out there on that front line? And as I look up on this stage, I can literally look at only 2 other people that were out there with the Asian community on a rainy, cold day, on a Sunday, out there with that Asian community, and that's what that man wants to know.
Allow me to ask the director to take a wide shot. I'd just like a show of hands. Who was there? More than 3. Thank you.
Can I just say something? Can I have a
I'll
rebuttal?
go to Sandra first, Justin, and then I'll get to you.
Okay, first of all, if the mayor is going to deal with the issue of hate in our community, it doesn't have to be every time a camera shows up, because many of the people on this stage show up when a camera shows up. But the fact of the matter is, I have been working for the last 15 plus years, and if you add the rest of my time to this, over 30 years dealing with issues of hate and crime for a very long time. I am not the type of person that only shows up when I'm going to get a sound bite on the camera. That's not what people are looking for. People are looking for you to solve issues. So you can stand up and say what you're going to stand up and say all day long, but if you don't put action behind those words, you're really not doing anything. And what the city needs is a mayor who is going to stand up and say, hate will not be tolerated, not on my watch, and enforce it every single day. And this laxy-daisy training that we are having on a regular basis with people saying, we're making sure you're culturally competent and give you an hour training, that is not going to work. We have had hate in our country since before the 1600s. And we've been dealing with those same racist policies for the longest. And just this year, since the pandemic happened, that's not when Asian people first started facing hate.
I'm going to stop you here because it is 30 seconds.
And I am the person to deal with it.
I'm going to go ahead and take the prerogative here to allow others to speak, but do please watch your 30 seconds. I promise Mr. Bibb you go next, but I will get to the others.
I want to make this known. You don't need to spend your entire career as a career politician to fight for these issues. From the streets to the suites, I've been fighting for diversity. I've been fighting for equity. I've been fighting to make sure that Cleveland can be a great city. And I've done this in my career as an executive and as an activist and as a civic leader in this community. And it's important to note that this is the kind of status quo thinking and perspective and leadership that the residents of the city of Cleveland are sick and tired of seeing. We can't afford more of the same. And it's that experience that has gotten to this point.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
You know, if you were to ask the Asian community who stood with them, as you know, I as a councilman, represent the largest Asian population in the city. Not only did I introduce the legislation, not only was I at the march and spoke, but I also supported the Asian businesses in the neighborhood. We did a major cash mob for an amazing restaurant there and helped support her because she was receiving the support. You know, because she was receiving hateful calls. As mayor, what I plan to do is that racial inequity is solved by making sure that every group has a seat at the table. As mayor, we will do more business with every minority, right? We have to do more business. Economic opportunity is the thing that will destroy racial inequity.
Thank you. And before we move on, Mr. Kucinich, last word.
20 years ago in the United States Congress, I brought forth an idea to create a cabinet-level Department of Peace, and I want to bring this into Cleveland City Hall so that we can address these issues that are all over town, wherever there's violence or hate. Those are often a learned response. We need to change that response so we can actually use Cleveland as a place that can show the whole country that we can be a more peaceful city, a safer city. And as far as the questions of equity, we need job equity, financial equity, and safety equity for people of all race, colors, and creeds. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to stick with the racial equity issue because it does obviously have interest here on the panel. A question that came to us frequently in our survey, but not necessarily from one person on tape. So we've combined this. I'll give you the question. With the racial divide in Cleveland, the new awareness of discrimination, and inequities after the George Floyd murder, the divide in housing and many other circumstances, what are your plans to solve the age-old racial tension that permeates this city? And Mr. Reed, I'll go to you first.
Well, first of all, let me say this. Attacking me doesn't solve the problem. Let me be clear. Attacking me does not solve the problem. And there's no substitute for experience. So when you talk about me going out on that front line and doing what I do, because I listen to the people in the city of Cleveland. So when you talk about that question and what I'm going to do what I've been doing when I was a councilman for 17 years and got elected 4 times. When Ms. Jones called me on the phone, I didn't just call her back, I went and talked to her on her front porch. When Mr. Smith needed help on his street, I went and I talked to him on his back porch. So we can continue to say what and continue to try to attack me and what I've done. But my record speaks for itself. And the people in Mount Pleasant and Union Miles and Mill Creek, they've spoken on 4 occasions and said the best person to be the council person in this ward is Zack Reed. And that's what it's all about. It's about transparency and being out there on the front line with the people and the citizens of the city of Cleveland.
Thank you.
Rebuttal.
30 seconds.
First of all, I was not pointing out any particular candidate on this particular stage. But if a hit dog hollers, evidently it means something. Just like each and every one of you We have our own way of handling the business for the residents of the city of Cleveland. I'm on the front line as well, and I have been there since I have been a corrections officer, probation officer, and parole officer. And I don't always have to be at a rally. I'm in the homes of residents. They are calling me on my cell phone.
That's your
They
30.
are calling me on my home phone. They're calling my office to get issues addressed because they are tired of lip service. So if whoever feels hurt by my statement, that wasn't what I meant to be, but I'm calling it like I see it.
Thank you, Senator.
I am the one to get the job done.
Thank you. We're going to go back to the full 1-minute question with Mr. Kucinich, rather.
When we're talking about racial equity, we should be talking about job equity. As mayor of the city of Cleveland last time, half of my key appointments went to people in the black community. We need to be talking about financial equity. Look at how the banks have redlined the city. There are city neighborhoods where people can't even get a loan on their property, and even though their property's in good shape. And we know what the banks did. They exploited people, particularly on the east side, peddling no-doc and low-doc loans to people who then ended up losing their homes because of the bank's involvement. We need, as a mayor, remember, I was chairman of a congressional investigative subcommittee that went after these people involved in a subprime meltdown. So I know exactly what they do. I'm going to insist that the banks stop any redlining practices, loan money into communities where they're making money, and make sure that the resources of this community go to help all the people. And that's a question of racial equity right now. It's access to capital. And as mayor, I'll have the experience to be able to make sure we get money into communities that need it. Thank you.
Basheer Jones, what's your plan to solve the age-old racial tension here?
Well, first, to the residents, I just want you to understand that just because someone says they have experience, that's not enough. I mean, I know people who have been doing the same thing for a long time the wrong way. The fact is that the city of Cleveland needs to go in a different direction. We must. We have to stop playing to the fears of people. We are not an east side and a west side. We are one Cleveland. And I think that that's what has to show. We have to bring the city services to the community. Right now, there's a part of the community that believes that one side is getting more. No, we have to bring city services to Cam's Corner and the corner of Huff. And as mayor, I want to push for equity, not just in words, but in action, in how we do business, diversity within City Hall, right? Diversity in regards to inspiring other institutions within our city to also have racial equity within their positioning, but it can't just be words. And being on the front line, is nothing wrong with that. We could be on the front line and behind as long as we are there for all people. We have to come together and work together. That's the only way we can move this city forward.
We're going to move on.